Enhancing student employability through the peer review of professional online presences. My name is Thomas Lancaster. I'm an academic at Birmingham City University, and you can also find out more about me on my website at thomaslancaster.co.uk and the blog there, which is integrated with the site with all kinds of posts about some of my work and findings. This is a talk I originally gave at the Birmingham City University Annual Research Conference, RESCON. It's a conference which brings together PhD students, researchers, academics to share some of the latest findings. Most of mine tend to be teaching related because that's where my passion is within education. Now, I have published several papers in this field, but most of this talk is new. It's bringing together some results I've analysed recently, so they haven't made the official form, but of course it does build upon some previous papers, book chapters, etc. that I've published. So just to tell you a bit about me and my background with professional online presences. I'm a senior lecturer at Birmingham City University teaching in the School of Computing because that's a field particularly well integrated with working with professional online presences and online websites. Of course, this now expands to many other students as this field has developed substantially over the past few years. One of my main passions with teaching is student employability. It's all about getting students into a good job at the end of their course. I teach those areas, particularly bringing in all the modern areas of interest to students. And I believe I was one of the first people in the UK to look specifically at this area to really modernise a lot of the employability curriculum. It's much more common now. An interesting fact is I use professional online presences as one of my case studies when I applied to become a senior fellow of the Higher Education Academy, and of course that was accepted. I am a senior fellow for them. The Higher Education Academy have been a big help and support with this work. They provided funding in the past for me to run workshops on professional online presences for both students and for staff looking to enhance their own careers, and I've developed teaching resources for them that are used elsewhere, and particularly a set of podcasts and a set of PowerPoint slides designed to make this work more accessible. I've also written several academic papers, a book chapter, plenty of blog posts on professional online presence as well to make this more accessible to students and other academics, because there's no reason academia has to be a dry subject, and that's one reason I'm keen to communicate with you today in this video format to really help take research to new people and to improve its research impact. I said we were talking about professional online presences in this video and some of the work I've done with students and the results of that work. But first of all, it would help to have a working definition of what a professional online presence is, and you may pull this definition apart. It's not considered to be watertight or a formal academic definition. How I think of professional online presences are the set of websites and other online resources which can be pulled together to show us something about the online persona of an individual, and by individual in this particular video we're thinking primarily of students. To think of this another way, what happens if you go into Google or another search engine, type in a student's name and search for them? What comes back? And hopefully it's a lot of very positive things about that student, but that's not always the case. And one thing I do is I try and encourage students to think about the information about them and to try and position it so that the good information is what other people see. These are just a few sites I've pulled together which you might find during that search. And I say you might find these, but quite often employers will go directly to some of these sites and search for students. LinkedIn is a professional social network. It's one I certainly encourage students to use all the time and to create professional list of contacts on there. The social network most students use is Facebook now, and employers have been known to go straight onto Facebook and search for students. I remember speaking to an employer and he told me it was very suspicious when he went on Facebook and couldn't find a student. It means that the student's got something to hide. Twitter, microblogging platform, very useful because it can be accessed quickly and not take too much time out of your day to do that. Mahara is an online portfolio system. It's the one we use at Birmingham City University. YouTube, a video system. You may well be watching this video on YouTube right now. A great way of creating a professional online presence for people who don't like writing. Raptor, now that is there to represent online gaming profiles. I spoke to an employer recently, in fact he came in to give a talk to our students, and he said he always goes now and he searches on gaming sites to find out more about students, which was a new one on me, but it's very important. Students who spent a lot of time gaming, maybe in a computing field but could be in any field, can be found by their usernames on that site, and it tells you a lot about students based on what games they play, how active they are, how much time they commit to the games, etc. GitHub is a site used particularly in computing, where it's essentially the code management system for programming, but it can be used to create a portfolio of programming code. And the bottom right, the W symbol, is WordPress. Now, WordPress is a blogging platform. You can just go on websites and it's all available and installed for you. It can also be installed onto your own server. These are just some of the sites that you may find, and different fields have slightly different sites coming back in this search as well. I personally tend to recommend that a student gets their own domain name and uses WordPress and installs that, particularly in a computing field where we'd expect them to have technical expertise. But you can create a very good professional presence just by having a good optimized LinkedIn profile and referring employers straight to that profile. I say you can create this, but it always amazes me. I teach this in a second year module, and most students don't know that prospective employers will search for them. They won't just believe everything they put on a CV or application form. And in a second year module, I've had some numbers to support this in the past, but I see this anecdotally just looking around a classroom. Most students in the second year of a computing degree have never created a LinkedIn profile. In fact, many of them have never even heard of LinkedIn, and that's quite worrying in this day and age, where students really need to be using LinkedIn in the second year as part of their strategy to get a placement. So how do I teach students about professional online presences? Well, the module I just mentioned is called Research and Professional Practice UG2. It's a second year module on 3 computing degrees at Birmingham City University. The number of students on this module has gone up and up every year, starting from around 100. Now it can be anywhere up to 300 depending on the year. I suspect it will soon surpass that because we're anticipating this module appearing on other computing courses. At the moment, the biggest course is BSc Computer Science, which is also the course that I lead, which is another reason I'm very passionate about helping this particular group of students. It's also on BSc Business Information Technology and BSc Information and Communication Technology. There's 2 halves to the module. The first half is about employability skills, helping students to obtain their salary or placement or graduate job. The second half is on research techniques, and of course it's the employability skills section I'm talking about right now. And that covers essentially, as well as looking at online presences, social media use, it looks at the idea of placements, why they're important, supported by some previous research I've done, and other research that's out there in the field. All this feeds into the research techniques section of the module as well. And it also leads students through several different types of application processes, looking at things like application forms, CVs, online tests, aptitude tests, interviews, assessment centres, presentation skills, and many other ideas that students just don't realise are out there in their way when they're trying to find a job. In order to keep the assessment interesting, we do ask them to create a professional online presence. And just to let you know, this presentation is looking at results from the 2014 to 2015 module delivery. This is the assignment. There's a lot more information to support this and give students ideas on the Moodle site we use. So it's all submitted online as well. We only ask students to create a professional online presence using a single site, although we suggest they set up many more. This is the marking criteria for this, and although I've been using this assignment now for about 5 years, the change I've made in recent years has been to introduce peer review to the mark. So out of the 40% of the module mark, 15 credit module for the assignment, then the students are required to mark 5 other students' work. 70% of the overall mark is awarded based on a weighted average of the mark that students received for their own professional online presence. The 7 criteria listed on the slide here. Looking particularly at everything from the question, what's above the fold? When you go to the website, what's the first thing someone sees? What's their impression? To the detailed information that is on the site, with additional marks for anything that makes it stand out, such as technical challenge, which you'd expect from computing students, or creativity. And of course, the quality information and use of English is important as well. So 70% of the marks is awarded for that. We use a built-in module within Moodle. It's called the Workshop module, and it's very well tested. It doesn't just do a raw average, a raw mean of the marks obtained. It looks at the exact criteria chosen by its student and then weights towards the most common criterion in order to work out a mark. So if a student just decides to mark everyone 100% or 0% and not put any effort in, that won't have much of an effect on the overall mark that the original student did. The students who provided poor quality information will also suffer from this poor quality marks, because they'll get a low mark for accuracy, which is 30% of the mark, and the accuracy component within the Moodle Workshop module is calculated essentially based on looking at how far away from the idealistic mark, the best guess at what the mark should be from other students, that particular student is. Just to give you a little bit more detail about the assignment, it does ask the student to create a single site, so it might be on their own website, it might be using Mahara or LinkedIn, which are 2 services we particularly push on the module. Mahara because it's a university portfolio system, and a lot of student work is very suited to portfolios in the computing discipline. LinkedIn because it's a well-established and professional network which all students should be using, and very easy to set up, requiring no technical skills. We do also ask the students to include a 2-year personal development plan and their CV, or to incorporate the equivalent information from their CV onto the professional online presence. And then the peer reviewing is 6 professional online presences, including the student's own. And it's interesting to see how the student's own mark differs from the marks awarded by other students. This also feeds into the accuracy mark. Just to give you a quick idea why I chose to use peer review, it was to improve the module essentially. There are a lot of different staff teaching on the module, all with their own ideas. There are lots of students taking the module, all with their own ideas about what a good professional online presence should be. And that's similar to the real world, where every employer has a slightly different idea about what makes a perfect application. And we're now letting many more students cast their eyes on professional online presences. That means more feedback for every student about how to improve. There are lots of side benefits as well. It's using tried and tested mechanisms. It's very easy to use once you get this set up in the Moodle site. It does take a bit of setting up the first time. There are a lot of people teaching on this module now. I can't teach every group as I may have done in the past, so I can't get the same consistency of the feedback and information received by students. And the side effect, it lets students see how a marking scheme works. They think about their own work in a different way once they've seen how their peers have tackled this, and they get all kinds of inspiration from it. I have used peer review before in other modules, dating back to research modules on former schemes. I've found personally that it works very well. It's all used this Moodle Workshop module. It's not the only peer review system out there, but it is the one that I'm happy to continue using and to recommend. There is a small learning curve the first time you use it, but it scales up really well. And considering there's somewhere normally around 250 to 300 students on this module, then I don't have to go and physically choose which students assess which other students. On the subject of assessment, I want to share a few of the highlights of some analysis I've done of the results from this particular run, 2014 to 2015, of the Research and Professional Practice module. There are many more interesting results which I have analysed and might well find their way into academic paper, into other talks, or perhaps into blog posts, but I've just chosen a few highlights for this particular presentation. I think it's useful to start off by looking at what site students used, and I must admit, whenever I've run this module, I've hoped students will use their own website. That's the 21 students here out of what turned out to be 190 students who submitted work this time. There are a few more students on the module who didn't submit work for various reasons. That's quite low, students choosing to use the technical skills they developed in the first year of the course and create their own website. Unsurprisingly, LinkedIn and Mahara are the dominant choices. The two that surprised me were two called Weebly and Wix, essentially site builders, drag and drop sites for students to create their own professional online presence there. And there are various other sites that students used as well, mainly other site builders and similar. I did find that there was a positive correlation between the mark that a student was awarded, so that's the overall quality of their work, and the accuracy that particular student got for marking other students. It's quite a big sample, so I'm happy to say, using a Pearson correlation test, Pearson correlation coefficient converted into a t-test, that this is a very significant result. And it doesn't really surprise me that people are putting more effort into creating their site. I like to put more effort in to accurately marking other students, and the same at the bottom end of the scale. People are putting less effort into their own sites are probably going to put less effort into marking other students. There is a good spread there of distribution of marks. You will notice, unfortunately, 3 students who have no mark at all for accuracy, who just chose not to do that section of the assignment, which obviously limited their overall mark and whether they could pass as a whole. There are also a few students who got very low marks and possibly shouldn't have done, but they managed to submit dead links. They submitted links to pages and sites that were locked so the public couldn't view them. Or sometimes they submitted a link which just opened a standard edit page, because all they've done is gone to the address bar and copied that, and unfortunately that really isn't sensible. And so many suggestions were made to students to check this and how to look at this that it's a question I grapple with every year, but it's not one I've solved. This is the marks that students obtained from the different sites. I've already shown the number of students using the sites in the graph on the previous slide, but you can see the different mean marks, and you'll notice the mean marks around the low 50s for using LinkedIn and Mahara, these really common sites, and some quite high mean marks for the other sites there, even the site builders. And it did surprise me slightly, the mark for the student using the other sites turns out to be very fractionally higher than students use their own website, but it's such a small sample for the other site that it doesn't really tell us anything, and I believe that was 5 completely different sites. The related information here shows you the achievement within the marking bands, and a decent number of firsts, 21 out of 190, so slightly over 10%. I would like that to be slightly higher. These marks, incidentally, are just looking at the marks students obtained for their professional online presence. I'm not looking at the accuracy, which do change these numbers slightly. Vast majority of students getting 2 1s. A few more than I'd like getting 2 2s, but that reflects the average mark there, which was in that band, even though there were good marks on either side. But the volume of marks slightly dominant in the other direction. A disappointing number of fails in that assignment, but many it's for people who either handed in dead links, and also people who just copied their CV and pasted it into the text box where they were meant to submit the URL to their site, and unfortunately it's very hard to get around that. I'm open to ideas. Feel free to comment on the video or on my blog if you have any. Finally, I want to look at the students who did really well, the high achieving professional online presences, and what did they do to make themselves stand out. The first column here has a number of firsts within the different areas, and the most firsts were obtained by people who created their own website, which is something that's very pleasing, although the students on Weebly did very well too. The second column shows the percentage of all the first class marks obtained from the different sites. So that's just taking the numbers dividing out of the total 21. And as you'd expect, the numbers Own and Weebly are very close together, so very similar percentages there. Perhaps a more interesting one is the third column. This shows you for a student who chose a particular, out of all the students who chose a particular site, what percentage of students submitting their professional online presence using that site obtained a first class mark. And there again, Own and Weebly dominate, slightly different numbers. People who chose to create their own website got a first class mark, that's a mark over 70, 38.1% of the time. The thing that really surprised me there is Weebly. People who chose to use Weebly got a first class mark 38.89% of the time. And to me, that's quite incredible it would work out like that, but I'll show you some examples of the difference between how students' own websites and Weebly looked. Incidentally, the number of students creating their own website was 21, which explains why the same number looks like it's repeated in that table. It's purely coincidental. I said I'd show you some examples of these different sites. So here are some of the students' own websites that they created. These are just 3 of them that I picked up recently. They show quite a variety of things. You notice the top right there showing some blogs, showing some involvement with an external activity that we ran. We've got the very colourful one there at the bottom there with links to social media profiles and tweets and bringing in several concepts from the module. And interesting one at the top left, configures.co.uk, which was a domain registered by 2 brothers who were both studying on the module. They created their own websites, both of them different on that server, but at the top level of that server they've got details of their own IT business, and it's all showing extra things to support their employability. But I want you to look at that very standard layout for the sites and then to show you these ones from Weebly. And this is the site builder, and to me they're not substantially different on the previous slide. Everyone's chosen to put a very visible image of themselves, which is a good thing. 2 of them very professional. One of them, there's a reasonable enough picture there that it works. Similar kind of information. You notice the tabs across the top. A lot of the Weebly sites look quite like each other, but the overall layout is different. It is showing some level of professional understanding and some ability to configure sites, and presumably the information on these sites is really good. I've not drilled down to that level yet, but it is what we want to see. But I'm slightly surprised that Weebly turned out to score so well under the marking criteria. But the students who've chosen to use it have clearly benefited from this assignment as a whole. I'd like to close this video presentation of the research now with a look at some analysis and discussion. And I'm going to start off with some good practice. The very pleasing thing that several students who did this assignment around a year ago, slightly under a year ago, have kept their professional online presences updated. They're now using these to support their employability. However, when I came to produce this presentation, I noticed that several of the students had registered domain names, had taken them offline, and that's not terribly good for these students either. And of course the reason it's not terribly good is those students own their domain names. Someone else could come along now and grab that. And anyway, you have information on the internet about yourself of high quality, and you lose that, you're diminishing the return from your professional online presence. I have analysed informally the type of feedback given by students, and we also had formal feedback from students about the module. A few interesting points are included here. One thing that really did stand out to me is some of the feedback students give can be very insightful, but students are very intolerant of errors on professional online presences, particularly spelling mistakes and grammar mistakes, the kind of things that students seem to just brush over and ignore. If this is on an essay or written assignment, a lot of them are very vocal about on professional online presences, which is a good thing, probably more vocal than I would be in terms of the level of detail students are willing to provide there. I did notice that the choice of site for professional online presences systems is very dependent on which staff are teaching them. I don't have the full information to do that analysis, but some staff certainly seem to be pushing their students more towards LinkedIn or Mohara, for instance. I'll be interested to do the analysis as well by course and see if the more technical courses do more with this. Most students chose not to create a website, as I mentioned before, slightly disappointing. One thing that did surprise me, some of the students were not keen to put their personal development plan visible or to put this on a site they'd already established, because the worst students already had their own domain name. I did suggest ways around this, for instance, creating a subdomain on the site or password protecting that document and including the password with the submission. But it's something to think about. Is trying to cover all these different skills within a single module can be challenging. There are always people who complain about using peer review. Some people say it's just to stop the staff doing work. I can't say it eliminates work. There's a fair amount of management of this process, dealing with questions, helping students with problems that are still there. We do provide information in the module to show us a valid assessment pedagogy. A very positive note to finish on: the number of computing students having gained a sandwich year placement has been in record levels after the module, so I'd like to think that the teaching here provided some help towards that. And one thing I'm going to do is to make the information available in this talk, plus some more information I've done some analysis from, possibly including results from this year as well as soon as they're available, and make that available to students for next year. It's not been quite soon enough to tell students doing their assignment this year, although we have made a few hints and suggestions for that. I'm really keen to see how students use that within the research part of the module and whether they can understand this is there to benefit them. I've been very happy with how this has worked out, and I hope to continue to do much more work with professional online presences, because I really do believe it's an idea that can be taken back to other institutions and does benefit students in the long run, helps towards their personal marketing, their branding and their employability. If you have found this talk useful, I recommend you look at some further resources. I've had several academic publications, delivered invited talks in this area. I'm more than welcome to come and deliver talks either to staff or students on this, and I can also do a good talk looking at academic branding as well. A lot of my resources are available on professionalonlinepresence.com. You can also find more information there. I do recommend, if you create resources, you think about web names to go with it as part of your own professional brand. If you want to access the slides from this presentation, they're on my SlideShare account, slideshare.net/Thomas Lancaster. The video is on my YouTube channel, where you can see other videos I've created as well relating to other aspects of my research and teaching. And I'm very easy to contact. Probably the best way is through my website, thomaslancaster.co.uk, or to just tweet me. I'm at Dr. Lancaster. Thanks for joining me. I hope you had some good ideas from this video looking at professional online presences. I found peer review to work really well in this format and I hope to do much more with it. Do check out my other videos. Thanks again.